members of the fourth estate, colleagues of the Sierra Leone Bar Association, ladies and gentlemen. The most preferred occasion we would have had subsequent to the annual general meeting of the Sierra Leone Bar Association would have been an occasion of us coming together to celebrate a successful AGM. It would have been an occasion of us coming together to continue to pursue the ideals and aspirations of the Sierra Leone Bar Association under the leadership of an executive that would have been democratically elected. It would have been an occasion for us to hug one another and say, we went into the electoral contest as two contestants, we competed, and we all won at the end of the day. But sadly, unfortunately, pathetically, we are here summoning the fourth estate to witness a resolve. And that resolve is predicated on our firm conviction that we cannot continue to turn a blind eye to infractions of laws, violations of principles of democracy, justice, good governance, and the rule of law. And so today, whilst I had hoped that coming back to Freetown would be sharing dreams and continuing the camaraderie which we believed we had always enjoyed, this is not why we're here today. It is not why we're here today because few people decided to murder democracy. Few people decided to annihilate those lofty ideals and principles which should define the Bar Association. So today we are here to make it abundantly and unequivocally clear that gone are those days when we would sit idly by, unscolded, feet crossed, and allow perpetrators to continue to destroy the fabric of a society. This is why we're here. I do not know if I should welcome you, but I am happy the two have turned up and you are here to join us today to reaffirm that resolve. And believe me, you, the conviction that is deep in our belief that we will put a stop. At least we'll start now to the wrongs that continue to be present after that. So whilst I would love to welcome you differently, I have to still welcome you to this press conference and hope whatever we would hear from our leaders, the questions we get from the fourth estate and the answers that would come from our leaders will truly represent the genuineness of our cause and the sincerity of this pursuit. Once again, I welcome you and thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, by now you would have seen a plethora of videos on social media that show how badly democracy was mutilated in Kenya. You would have seen how nefariously people went about to prevent the tools of democracy to have a stay within the AGM. But we believe that it is possible that one or two important clips may have skipped memories. And so we want to use this opportunity to let all of us here today see snippets of what happened in Kenya. How badly colleagues treated their fellow members of the bar. So I now call on the media team to please play for us a video which is a collection of the snippets from Kenya. Please let us watch.
The AGM election day started. The AGM election day started peacefully as lawyers queued at the entrance to be verified by OSD police officers. At 11:48 a.m., the General Secretary, A.P. Jua Esquire, called the AGM to order. He was immediately nudged that it was not yet 12 p.m. Hall announced to wait till 12. Wala Kamal, together with her team and supporters, lodged a bow because all hotels in Kenema were fully booked. Wala and her team left Bo for Kenema at around 10 a.m. On their way, a truck blocked the entrance. Those are not people Strange people in those come on the failure to God and meet and they perform. These are not what we do for exercise. The meeting was called to order at 12 and immediately the Kafala interjected that he had a motion to move for the item number 8 election to be moved to item number 2 General Secretary's report in the election. To get the talk out of the way and arrive at the venue after the motion of the agenda has been moved. At that time, some previous lawyers were stopped at the gate because their names were not on the verification list, even though they were in their seat. Nominations were made for the returning officer. MBT Esquire raised a counter motion on the grounds that colleagues were on their way to the venue. He also submitted that majority items should receive election in an AGM. The chairman of the General Legal Council came to the podium to announce that we would go with the initial agenda, but Ben forcefully withdrew the mic from him and announced the commencement of the election, disregarding the request from two presidential aspirants, Soyi Sengemala and Rana Selekamal. Few lawyers refused to vote when majority chanted. Then continued distributing the ballot papers without verifying the voters in the midst of the chaos. Then continued distributing the ballot papers without verifying the voters in the midst of chaos. It was observed that when gave ballot papers to Muslim lawyers or people with no band on their list. Some people collected more than one ballot paper. This resulted to the conduct to stop the process that it was not fair. Then the Ghana ordered the police officers to push any lawyer that climbed up the stage. Police stopped them, firing with tear gas and using pepper spray on them. Majority of lawyers ran outside. Then ordered.
Thank you very much for watching. Ocular demonstration is saying is no further proof. Ocular demonstration is no further proof. All of these are out there. Very clear. Very, very clear. So we all have seen how colleagues were treated, how democracy was murdered. And believe me, it is sad, it is pathetic that that was not being done by line riders. I mean, by no means I am underestimating the integrity of line riders. But to whom much is given, much is expected. Lawyers went together. We expected democracy. We expected rule of law. We did not get either. What we got was a clear genocide against democracy. Democracy was under attack. And the videos are very clear on that. Ladies and gentlemen, having said all of that, we'll now get a joint press statement from the aggrieved candidates, presidential candidates, and after the press statement, we'll have questions, and they will answer those questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to present to Miss Waraseri Kamal for the start of the Yes.
I think it is important to note that we do not have only two agreed candidates, but we have members who agree.
I agree. That's it. On that note, let me make it abundantly clear that Miss Waraseri Kamal and Mr. Augustine Maran, they are agreed, but they are also representatives of agreed members of the Senate party. And so we be speaking for themselves and we also speaking for and behalf of the agreed members of the association. Thank you very much, Mr. Busutilo, Mr. Waraseri.
Good morning. You're going to have to pardon me some. I've lost my voice. I think the Bar Association conference, both literally, it seems, and figuratively stole my voice on that day. But I will not stop speaking because it's not in my spirit to do that. This is a joint statement by Augustine and myself condemning the events of the annual general meeting of the association in Canada on May 18th. The events at the AGM of the Sierra Leone Bar Association represented a grave assault on the principles of democracy, transparency, integrity that this association was founded upon. The actions and inactions of the board of directors at the AGM, which have led to the declaration of a purported executive that was not duly elected, are not only illegal, but they're also deeply troubling. I will repeat that. It is a purported executive. They were not duly elected, and they are not our executives. Before the date of the AGM, we made concerted efforts to enhance the integrity, the transparency, and the accountability of the electoral process. Our actions included 1, court applications. Solicitors for Julian Cole, Waraseri Kamal, and Joy Precious Bayo filed applications in court aimed at greater participation of members. These applications sought voting by proxy, early publication and verification of the voters' list, among other things. The court refused all of those applications. The second is we raised security concerns through 2 letters addressed to the Inspector General of Police. We requested a meeting with the Sierra Leone Police to discuss and address security concerns ahead of the conference. Those requests fell on deaf ears. The meeting were not granted. Proposed meetings. We, Augustine Maran, myself, through letters addressed to the outgoing president of the bar, Ms. Swallow, proposed a meeting with the directors of the association. The purpose was to discuss and outline a clear pathway for the electoral process. The president said she was too busy and she declined to meet with us. These events confirmed that what occurred at the AGM in Canada was enabled by the association's directors, and the role played by the Sierra Leone police and the courts did not help the situation. As you can tell, my voice is very hoarse, so Mr. Morai is going to take it from here.
Thank you, Ms. Kamal, and good afternoon, the Fourth Estate. Good afternoon, colleagues. Permit me to stand on the days of the protocols that have been established. And permit me equally to run you through some of those horrendous account of some of the things that were unleashed upon us. With your permission, may I continue? It is with great disappointment that we address the series of undemocratic maneuvers orchestrated by the association's directors and their enablers in Kenya. These include the blatant disregard for the electoral process and the disenfranchisement of members, which are clear violations of the Memorandum and Articles of Association of the Sierra Leone Bar Association, the Companies Act 2009 as amended, and ethical principles of decency and integrity. 1. Manipulation of voter lists. It was evident from the outset that the integrity of the voter list was compromised. Members who had duly paid their dues found their names omitted from the list, an issue that was raised by some members, yet was not addressed by the directors. 2. Unlawful agenda changes. The amendment of the agenda to commence voting prematurely at exactly 12 p.m., when in fact the time slated for registration and arrival of members was 12 to 1 p.m., was a calculated move to disenfranchise colleagues who were traveling from Bo and Freetown and whose movements had been largely blocked by a truck on the Bo-Kenema highway. Imposition of a returning officer. The purported appointment of Francis Ben Kaifala, Ben is significant, it's been distorted. The Commissioner of the Anti-Corruption Commission as returning officer, despite objection to his nomination on the grounds of conflict of interest, the omission to put the other nomination of Julius Nai-Kofi, including Mr. Kaifala's, to a vote by the members, and the refusal to allow the usual practice of appointing 3 senior members of the bar present in the hall to assist the returning officer, which would have ensured a fair process, is unacceptable. The act of Francis Ben Kaifala, the ACC boss, and you can put an exclamation point there, the ACC boss, purportedly acting as electoral commissioner, undermine the very democratic processes we seek to hold. 4. Sham electoral process. The purported elections presided over by Francis Ben Kaifala was conducted without recourse to any verified voter list in a hall shut down by security personnel on instructions of Mr. Francis Ben Kaifala. After security personnel had dispersed with pepper spray and or tear gas a majority of the members who were present, that only a handful of members, including other unidentified persons who were in support of Tuma Jabi and who mostly wore blue wristbands, were allowed to vote. At some point, I questioned my what God cannot do does not exist blue band. At some point, that only a handful of members, including other unidentified persons who were in support of Tuma Jabi and who mostly wore blue wristbands, were allowed to vote. Other fully paid up members were denied ballot papers, while those with the blue wristbands received multiple ballots. The handful of voters for Tuma Jabi, that's an interesting point, under the watchful eyes of Francis Ben Kaifala, were able to mysteriously generate amongst them the total of 560 votes for Tuma Jabi in the purported election for president of the Bar Association. We also the handful of people who, using the skills of Harry Potter, magically came up with 560 votes. In view of the events narrated above, which are an affront to the values of integrity accountability, and democracy, we, Augustine Soyisen Bemara and Warasei Kamal, and the numerous aggrieved members of the Sierra Leone Bar Association take the following positions. One, that the executive purportedly selected at the AGM in Kenema does not represent the will of paid-up members of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. Consequently, we do not recognize them as duly elected. Position number 2. We shall explore all legal means to ensure that an election of directors of the association consistent with democratic standards is held as soon as possible. So note, colleagues, we are not asking for fresh elections because no election was conducted. We are not asking for a rerun because no election was conducted. We are asking for elections meant to be held at the AGM to be conducted. The third position is that we shall also explore all accountability measures against all those who were complicit in the sham electoral process. One does not need to bend the curves of Kabbalah to know those who were complicit. Yes, one does not need to bend the curves of Kabbalah to know those who are complicit. Finally, colleagues, and the fourth estate, we all members of the Sierra Leone Bar Association to join us in the call for justice and to remain steadfast in the face of these challenges. Together, we can reclaim our association and its voice, uphold the standards of democracy and fairness that we also lovingly cherish. God bless you. Sign Augustine Soyisen Bemara. Sign Madam Warasei Kamal. Dated this 12th day in the year of our Lord, dated 21st May 2024. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, members of the fourth estate, ladies and gentlemen, we will very soon come to the question and answer session. But before that, may I take this opportunity to read to you a resolution by past president of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. This is a resolution by past president of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. It is, we, the undersigned past president of the Sierra Leone Bar Association, unreservedly condemn the violence perpetrated by some members of the bar at the annual general meeting held in Kenema on May 17th and 18th, 2024. Such actions are antithetical to the values and principles of a noble profession. We equally condemn all attempts to disenfranchise members of the association and to deny them their right to elect new leaders. Any conduct that undermines the democratic process within our association is unacceptable and must be thoroughly investigated and addressed. Given the gravity of these issues, we unequivocally call for the nullification of the results announced at the AGM in Kenya. To restore faith and integrity within within a professional body, we call for the immediate organization of proper and transparent elections. These elections must adhere to the highest standards of fairness and impartiality, ensuring that all eligible members can exercise their right to vote without intimidation or obstruction. Furthermore, we urge the leadership of the Sierra Bar Association, headed by Ms. Edina Swallow, to take decisive action to address the irregularities and improprieties observed during the recent election process. It is imperative that the association oppose its commitment to the rule of law, democratic governance. We stand united in our resolve to protect the integrity of the Sierra Leone Association and to ensure that justice and democracy prevail within our ranks. Dated 20th May 2024. Signed, Charles Francis Magai Esquire. Francis Gabriel Esquire. Emmanuel Shiraz Moses Esquire. Joseph Victoria Kamara Esquire. Abdul Tijan Cole Esquire. Elvis Tago Esquire. Ibrahim Sori Esquire. Rodan Sushantabo Esquire. Basita Michael Esquire. Hello. I can understand. This is a very, very emotive issue. It's a very emotive issue. I mean, it would have been completely different if it were some strangers perpetrating injustice, perpetrating undemocratic practices at that AGM. But the people who perpetrated these very horrible acts against us were the very colleagues we go to court to. The very colleagues. The very colleagues we attend back dinners with. The very colleagues we attend social functions with. Those very colleagues were the people who perpetrated these heinous, very horrible, and very nefarious acts against us. It is an emotive issue. It's a very serious issue. But we have said that we will try to manage emotions as best as possible. For we are defenders and promoters of the law. We are defenders and promoters of justice and democracy. So those ideas will be pursued diligently. They will be pursued with every fiber in us, with the greatest of conviction, and we shall leave no little stone unturned to undo this very horrible practice and this very, very dangerous precedent that has been set in the land. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue to reaffirm and resolve. We will not back down. We will make sure we will do the evil. On that note, I'll now call on questions from the fourth estate. And
We only get one mic. Okay.
Oh, yes, thanks.
So what we will do is so what we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, we will try to see if we can get 10 questions, but we'll take 3 questions per set, and the presenting aspirant will answer the questions. We'll take 4. We'll take 4 questions per set. The presenting aspirant will answer, and after the 2 sets, we'll take the remaining 2. But if we see need to take more questions, we start to I'll start with the gentleman on my right.
Thank you very much. My name is John Coleman. I'm a journalist and human rights campaigner. My question I want to ask Madam Wanasari Kumar is this. Do you have a well-founded conviction that there was political interference in the elections? If yes, can you give us an opinion to corroborate to the facts, please? And
I will answer my question. I will answer my question. He's trying to set me up. I'll answer that question. Lawyers' business.
What we saw were lawyers.
Not their positions.
secondly, I just researched 7 West African bar associations. 7 countries in West Africa bar associations in the last 10 years. And they never got elections with such a margin as 560 to 23. Now, to Madam Sari Kumar
And Mr. Mara.
and Mr. Mara, what would you estimate briefly how much we have come either closer to Magento or slightly overtaken?
You understand that question?
Hello, hello, hello. Please, hello, please, hello. Please, just so that we're very clear, we'll entertain only a question per journalist. Only a question per journalist, please, so that we can give opportunity to others to answer, please.
Good afternoon. I am Esther Kalitawani. I report for Akuru. My question is concerning the motions Sari Kamal mentioned. Part of it is said revolves around the false voting. Now, the question is, are you concerned that they were rejected, or are you concerned with the reasons for which they were rejected?
Good afternoon. I am a reporter for Export Times. It's worldwide. Okay, I'm concerned about, I'm worried as a citizen because if lawyers have modern democracy, I wonder where it's heading now. And my question goes to Mr. Mara. You talk about genocide against democracy. As learned scholar, if certain happen to Sierra, we still back with political issues within the country. Now, through the lawyers, people who you have so much respect that interpret the law. have committed a genocide against democracy. Where is self-respect?
Feedbacks from viewers on Facebook. Switch off your mics. Take it out when you're having
I want
technical.
to
Switch them off.
Mr. Mara and Madam which law does amendment of an agenda on the item on agenda negates the ceremony? I mean, the amendment from agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Let's have quiet, please. Please, let's have quiet. Let's continue. What I'm trying to say is that the problem started the agenda 8 coming to agenda 7. That's the election. I want to know which law in Sierra Leone that amendment on the agenda negates from 8 to 2. That is the question. Thank you very much. I'll now hand over the microphone to Ms. Seikaman to start asking the questions, and Mr. Mara will take up time. Well, Mr. Mara will start. Mr. Mara will start.
Thank you very much for the several persons who have posed the respective questions. I will start with Mr. John Kuma, says he's a human rights campaigner. I was asking about whether there was political interference in elections. I don't think so. The electoral fraud that we have narrated this afternoon was committed by identified persons. They cannot be ascribed to any political party. We think that we know these persons, they are lawyers, they are colleagues who perpetrated the evil in Kenema, and so in the absence of any other evidence, the evidence that we have seen this afternoon is that it was committed by a group of persons who are themselves lawyers, and so we think that we cannot politicize an error, a violation conducted by certain. He has also invited me to conjecture a guess in terms of what the margins would have been, who would have played a second fiddle and we had a decent and regular process. But I don't know about Madam Say Kamal, but I'm no magician. I cannot peep into the future. As far as we are concerned, there was no election conducted, and so there can't be any. I think I'll leave the question in terms of the motion for proxy to Madam Say Kamal. As far as our motion was concerned on proxy, there was no reasoning given by the court, and that is for estatari. Yes, there was no reasoning given in our own case, the application. She can answer for their own application. In terms of the application we filed, there was no reasoning given other than the fact that it is not covered in the M&A, which is not true. Mr. Jallo spoke about genocide against democracy, where is headed to? I think that's a political science question. It's very complex, and we can't unpack that this afternoon. Just that I would say for the avoidance of doubt, that the Bar Association is one of the cornerstones of our democracy. And if that cornerstone is affected, architects will tell you that the structural integrity of the building will be under question. That is all I will say. And last but not least, so the gentleman who asked about amendments of agenda, let me give you that scenario. I would not invite you into a legal meeting. I give you this scenario. There's a football match that is set for 2 p.m. At 1 a.m., a spectator shows up at 1 a.m. and then speaks to the officials to say, let's start this match at 1 p.m. Sorry. The match is to start at 2 p.m. Spectator comes forward to say, let's start this match at 1 p.m. While one team is warming up on the pitch, the other team is in the dressing room waiting for the match to start at 2 p.m. as they have been advised. This same person who suggested to the official to start the match at 1 p.m. is now appointed by the official to start the match at 1 p.m. And it is then, the very 1 p.m., that the other team got to know that the match was about to start at 1 p.m. And then they were running in the dressing room, and they were coming through the hallway to the pitch, and they were obstructed in the process. And this same person who advocated for the commencement of the match at 1 p.m. instead became the ref in that match. So without going into the legalities, I would say, to answer your question simply, the law permits for amendment of agenda. But in Kenema, 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock was stated in the notice, the agenda notice, for arrival of guests. So it was an hour-long item. And it is the very time that was slated for arrival of guests, that was when the election was commenced. So there was no way somebody who left Bo, hoping to get at Kenema at 1, hoping that at 1 the items would commence, there was no way they could have gotten to Kenema before 1, because they had the expectation, legitimately, that the AGM would commence at 1 p.m. Back to the analogy, if you announce a match at 2 and start it at 1, I tell you that beyond legalities, aside legalities, that was improper, and in fact, it was dangerously criminal.
I understand. Mr. Mara answered the questions and went with him. So, Julie, can you take some more questions? Because as far as the proxy voting, the judge did not rule on proxy for us at all, because he said that a previous judge had already ruled. So he was not going to comment on proxy. So as such, we did not get any reason whatsoever other than, well, Justice Stevens has ruled on this issue.
You see, just for clarity, like Mr. Mara has just said, 12 to 1 was taken for arrival and legislation. So, even assuming without conceding that the amendment was proper, even assuming without conceding, it could not have been done before 1 p.m. It could not have been done before 1 p.m. Right? Because it was only at 1 p.m.
that you could call
that the agenda program was supposed to be conducted. So at the risk of litigation, even assuming without conceding that it was proper, it was not in the first place, but even assuming without conceding that it was proper, you could not have have amended before 1 day. No way, you could not have. So that's the wrong response of it, and to be very honest, that's what it is actually.
Yes, for this night, I think I want to obey my name. Of course, we had this very good reasons and things that they use the court. Now, in this private use of court, if the court did not rule in your favor, Syrians want to know what next. Because the most important thing now is what next. If the court did not rule in your favor.
Hello.
Yes. Isaac Kellyson Congress. You are the first right now. According to the local media, Mr. Mara, you say elections did not take place and there is no to reward. And already the returning officer has pronounced a winner.
Hello. Please, let us quiet. Please, let us quiet. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let us quiet to continue.
Has pronounced a winner, and the winner has already gone ahead to pronounce our working team. Intelligently, there has been a foundation of division among the Group A and Group B. And there lies the need for a third party or an arbitrator to come between you.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Please, let me quiet. Hello. Hey, please, let me quiet. Please, let me quiet. You may proceed.
Intelligently, a division has taken place. Group A and Group B. And we know you as lawyers, always do your work here through the cross, through the law. And you have become victims of justice. Now, we cannot to come and say, Mr. B, Mr. A, this is what you need to know. My question is, do you have any appropriate headquarters that you can refine your grievance that will come to rescue this place?
Hello, please. Let me quiet. This is the first conference. We need to listen to the question asked by the journalist. Please, the first conference. Please let me listen to the question asked by the journalist. Please. It's the first conference. Let us listen to the question asked by the journalist. Please, thank you very much.
Allow me to raise my hand. I hope for the my question is, we have the same government here in this country. That is why we have the tripartite. The team,
Now, you are the lawyers. We are the people behind in this country. We have the same thing on your election day. What are you going to do, and what line of action you are going to take?
Good afternoon. Mohamed Cargo is my name. I work for State Television. In your joint press statement, you mentioned about conflict of interest in appointing the father for the returning officer. And you also mentioned that lawyers we are denied opportunity to cast their votes. Before the elections, was Father mentioned to you guys that he will serve as the returning officer for the elections?
So. Hello. Ibrahim Sample, Africa 21 newspaper. Are we foreseeing another bar association? That's my question. And two, you guys really agree with me that there was a systematic rigging on the elections? I am really dumbfounded.
Hello.
I am really dumbfounded. Yes, sir.
Please, just a second. Please, let's continue.
Alright. I said I am really dumbfounded. That's the day for the commission. I know most senior we are insiders. I want to ask why the appointment of the commission and the returning officer. Will you actually agree that let's appoint this man for commissioner? Or you guys somewhere other people say we can appoint for, or he the most senior in that, or he was the most senior that called to appoint him as the returning officer?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hello? I think the first question from AYV was that if the court does not rule in your favor, what will you do? Despite everything, we are lawyers and we have complete faith that justice will prevail. And we cannot speculate as to what the court will do at this time. We will certainly explore all options. But as lawyers, we cannot sit here and say, oh, what if the court rules in our favor or rules against us? Let us allow the system to work. We are the protectors of justice. We believe in the system. So we're going to take our matter to the courts and make sure we mount a case that is ironclad. You have seen this video. You know what you saw. This is not an election. And I do not believe that the judges of this country, the judges of our judicature, will see it any different. As far as the second question is, about the dispute between the two parties and the fact that we are divided and the need for a third party. There's no dispute between us. It's very simple. There was no election. So how can there be a dispute? This is nothing like national elections. There was 0 elections on that day. We went there for an AGM, a statutory AGM. a court-ordered AGM. We were clear on what we were supposed to do. None of it happened as it was supposed to. So for me, there's no need for somebody else to come between us. There's a need for this executive or the executive of Adenia Swallow to do their job. They haven't done it yet. Let them hold an AGM. Let them give us the statutory reports, their audited financial statements, and their reports of their tenure so that we can scrutinize them before we go into electing new directors. This is the process. It has not been followed. As far as national and this being the same thing, as I've already addressed that question, to me they're not the same. Here we did not have elections. And we do not and will not form a tripartite committee or whatever you call it. It will not happen in this instance. As far as conflicts of interest of Ben Kelfala endorsed Tuma Jabi. Ben Kelfala was part of her strategic team. So to stand there and accept, even if he was allegedly voted for, because you have to understand, our position was he was nominated and there were objections on the table. Objections were raised in that hall. They were ignored. Ignored because there was only few of our members that were in the hall at the time because they had intentionally kept us out of that hall so that they could do this injustice. So the reality is, he was not, even at that, he was not the most senior member in the hall. Alternative people were nominated and votes were not, they were never voted on. Julius Coffey was one of them, I believe. And so the reality is, Ben Kelfala was improperly and illegally imposed as the returning officer. If you look at our M&A, it's quite clear how it's supposed to work. And it's been working this way for lots of, I would say 20, 30 years. The most senior members of the bar run the election. Normally, there are 3 of them. One is the returning officer, and there are 2 others who are most senior. If you look at the picture of what Ben Kelfala did, he made himself the sole officer and then elected helpers, as he called them. Junior colleagues, somewhere even one was even a pupil. I am not casting aspersions at my junior colleagues, but our M&A is clear. We are lawyers. We ought to follow the law and regulations that guide us. Ben Kelfala bastardized that and did what he wanted to do, to impose an unduly elected Tuma Jabi on us, and we will not accept it. Certainly, Mr. Kelfala was never proposed as a returning officer, because if he had been proposed before, we would never have agreed. Remember, we took it up on ourselves. I wrote, and Mr. Marat joined me, to write the executive to say, let's sit down. Let's come up with a transparent process for the elections that we can all agree on before we go there. She told us she was too busy. She's not interested in meeting us. She's guided by the M&A. So for me, we did all we could. And if Ben Kelfala had been mentioned as our returning officer, we would have raised a conflict of interest and all our objections here. But we were not even given the dignity. We were not even granted that honor or granted that small deference of sitting down with us to talk to us because they were too busy and too important for us. That is not the kind of president we want. And that is not the kind of president either of us would be. As far as forming another bar association and all that, I can honestly say that this is our bar association. We're not giving it up just like that without a fight. We're not pursuing all of our legal remedies available. We will ensure we pursue all legal remedies available to us. And if we exhaust all of them and we are dissatisfied, you will know what we'll do next because we will invite you to it. But allow us to first pursue the full process. Allow us to challenge and to do what we know how to do legally. And we will definitely keep the fourth estate and the people of this country informed as to our next steps. As far as systematic rigging of elections, I don't think I need to answer. I think the room answered for you. Yes. We certainly feel like that. We know we were there. You saw the videos. That is not a room for an election. So we cannot say that an election was held. As far as, sorry. I think I'm going to have to pass it. I think I'm going to have to let Mr. Mara continue.
I think Madam Said Kamal has largely answered the several questions posed in the second set. I should just add that in addition to the letters that were written by our respective selves, we signed a joint communique and we were very clear in that communique that we wanted the executive to ensure that the nomination of the returning officer and the appointment is done by the membership of the bar, right? So that was an item that we had foreseen, and we're very clear that the due process ought to apply in terms of nomination and appointment of the returning officer. And I think they knew by their permutations that had they waited till 1 p.m. to commence the meeting, Mr. Francis Ben Kaifala, and we would always put an exclamation point after Ben before we get to Kaifala. Mr. Francis Ben Kaifala knew that at the meeting commenced at 1 p.m., he would not have seen, his nomination would not have seen the light of the day. So that is why during the period slated for arrival and registration of guests, that was when he got, sadly, we will name some names, that was when he got the Deputy Chairman of the Human Rights Commission to nominate Victor Lansana, to nominate him as returning officer. And that's what, that itself was wrong, because he knew the gentleman who nominated, he knew that the order of business ought to have started at 1 p.m. Right? And, you know, in terms of whether we're forming another bar association or do we envisage another bar association, I don't think that the good people should quit for bad people to have occupation. What we would do...
Not immediately.
What we would do is to ensure that there are accountability for those of our colleagues who have joined. Again, all options are available, but as Madam Said Kamal has mentioned, what we would do now is to demand, and very immediately, that the executive that we recognize, the executive headed by Madam Michaela Swallow, convenes an EGM so that the membership can then decide on the holding of an AGM and the holding of a democratic electoral process. As lawyers, we know that if she omits to do as demanded, we know what to do, and the general public, and especially the fourth estate, would then be, apprised in terms of what the next steps would be. But we would ensure that no undemocratic conduct is permitted, is accommodated in the Sierra Leone Bar Association. I am not speaking for any other organization. We are speaking for the Sierra Leone Bar Association. It is about time that we drew a line on the sand to say that we would not accommodate any undemocratic process. We have rejected it, and we would stand guided by the laws to ensure that a fair process is held and that democratically elected leaders are installed in the Bar Association. We would not stop halfway. We will go all the way to ensure that all those who are complicit in that criminal enterprise are brought to face the full force of the law. Thank you. I think that's
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You see, years back, I went to the media, and so I like to talk it through to them. Then, just for clarity, Article 36 of our Memorandum Articles of Association says that the returning officer shall be elected, and that person has to be a senior member of the bar. Right now, Francis Kaifala was nominated. There were objections. Now let us assume again that the objections were overruled. In fact, they were not. They were just ignored. The objections were ignored. There were objections on the ground of conflict of interest. They were ignored. But let us assume that okay, the objection did not stand, and he was a nominee for the returning officer position. Another senior practitioner was nominated, Nine Coffee. I personally nominated Nine Coffee, and his nomination was second. So, assuming Francis Kaifana's nomination was a good one, in other words, the objection was unsuccessful, and his nomination was good. Then, at the point Julius Nine Coffee was nominated, we then had two nominees for returning officer. If we have two nominees for returning officer, then we have to go into election as to who should be the returning officer. So, Francis and Julius Nine Coffee's nomination was also ignored completely. And again, if by practice or tradition, we were to say, okay, let us choose the more senior, then it will be Nine Coffee. But if you don't want to do the more senior, if you didn't want to do the more senior, then go invite elector between the two to determine who should be the returning officer. But Julius Nine Coffee's nomination was blatantly and blatantly ignored. So clearly, Francis Kaifala's role as returning officer purportedly was without basis, it was illegal, it was anti-MLA, and it was everything undemocratic. Let us be very clear about it. Yes, I think we're done. Okay, I think that's one more thing. Let's take it. The last two. No, right. The last two. I want to know whether how the two who were nominated for the appointment. We understood that about two was nominated, and Kofi declined his nomination. And I want to this is a press conference. Okay, and secondly, I want to know if the three candidates who are in the hall when the nomination took place, whether Wara and Sede we are also nominated. And then number three, I want to know whether they started a voting before the promotion erupted, or no voting started at all. No.
Good afternoon. I'm Nabil Ansari from Citizen Radio, the reporter. My question is going for Mr. Augustine Mara. He spoke about purported list. I want to know how many names registered and paid up lawyers whose names you have on that list. How many of them want to know? Because imagine 506 to 15 and 23. And also, we had that 28 invalid votes from our lawyers. Was it deliberate? Was it deliberate? Thank you.
One thing is, requirement for individuals who are going to contest for the presidency of the association. That's my first question. My second question is, what's joint leadership to those full association council, especially like what's happening in just please. Then, lastly, according to the submission, there are mentioned three things that go to court, not to and the right two letters to the responsibility to protect life and property. And lastly, the right to the president of the local association. She refused to get the notice. In all these three things, those why you fail to protest before going to contest. So don't huge. And see the article which we against the leadership.
Maybe down.
Very last one, the very last question. The very last question. That's the very last one. Very last question.
I want to take you for the second position. You want to explore all you can do to make sure you have another election. You have an election. Now, prior to the date time for the AGM, to explore all those things, who the leader, presidents, all have been swept from the market. And now listening here to Mr. Moya, you sound very much optimistic that your call to have an election will be adhered to. How confident are you?
Thank you very much. That's the last question.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I'll start with Mr. Aditue, who asked about. Hello. I think Mr. Tue asked about whether Mr. Givao was nominated. He was indeed nominated. I nominated him, but he declined the nomination. But Julius Knight Kofi was nominated. So there are two nominees on the floor, and the proper thing to have been done was to put those two nominees to vote. It was never done. So whether the candidates were in the hall when nominations were done, I can tell you that I was in the hall. I can tell you that Madam Wayasei Kamal rushed into the hall, perspiring visibly. You could see that she was racing against time. From what I understand, I stand to be corrected on this. Madam Tuma Jabi was not in the hall when she was nominated. So that was also a fundamental flaw in the process. Somebody asked about the purported list. Hello? Somebody asked about the purported list. We made, in the action that Mr. Julian Cole brought against the Sierra Leone Bar Association 2 years ago, we've had a pattern of, this conduct. 2 years ago, when the AGM was held in Bo, there was a resolution to extend the tenure of the executive from 1 year to 2 years. That resolution was so improperly done. Mr. Cole took the entire executive to court so that the court can have a ruling on whether they were properly elected for a 2-year tenure. We're still in court on that. Their tenure expired in February 2024. We're still in court. So that pattern started in February 2022. And guess who was behind that pattern? Your guess will be as good as mine. It was the exclamation point Ben that was also behind that resolution. So again, we had foreseen that the list was going to be an issue. We filed an application on I think the 26th of April, to say give us the list of registered voters, members, at least 48 hours before the AGM. The court did not give us that. The court said you can paste the list at a conspicuous place at the AGM hall. So indeed, while a certain list was pasted on at the back of the hall, but I can tell you that certain names of people who were paid up, including Mr. Julian Cole, who was my campaign manager, his name was not on that list. So he negotiated his way into the compound because he stood there. The police officers looked through the list and said, your name is not on the list. So we could not have scrutinized the list right there and then in the hall. We're no magicians. You're running to be nominated. There's a list, I think 14, 15 pages long. There was no way you could have verified 1,200 voters. So again, just to answer your question, that the list contained names. We did not know, we could not have verified whether they were indeed registered voters, or whether in fact they were lawyers at the very minimum. So we could not. I don't know whether the question was regarding whether the voting pattern was the debate. I think we missed that. 28 was in, but you know how people who are involved in this criminal enterprise would do. They would ensure that they give everybody a slice of the pie. So including invalid votes, void votes. They said, Mr. Void vote, there's no way I have given Madam Seikamal 23 votes. I have given Mr. Maya 15 votes. Mr. Void vote, please have your own 28 votes. But that's how criminals think. Because there's no way a lawyer who's voting for Madam Seikamal would not be able to spell the name of Madam Seikamal. There's no way a lawyer voting for, you can simply say Mara or Kamal. That should be a valid vote. You can simply write, so it appears as if people were very dexterous when it comes to spelling Jackie than when it comes to spelling Mara and Wara.
Seriously.
What we would do to those members who hold the association to ransom? Like we mentioned, we are not only going to demand that the executive that we recognize convene an EGM so we can decide on an AGM. We would also pursue what we call accountability measures for all of those persons, all of those lawyers who were complicit in the election racketeering. We would go after them, we would ensure that they are accountable, right? It is a strategy, it's a long process, we will think through, and then we will employ all legitimate means to ensure that they are accountable for their action. I think this question about the failure to protest with Madam Seikamal would address that. The last person asked about how confident are we. I understand the frustration because, not just for lawyers, several other persons, the artificial roadblocks in the judicial process. So what we have done is to ensure that we adopt a multiple approach to ensure that we get down to the bottom of this, to get justice. So believe you me, when those demands are not adhered to, we would ensure, because the law permits, that members can convene an EGM and members can then take the appropriate action. Believe you me, the arsenal that we have in the pursuit of what was done is unimaginable. We have assembled enough arsenal, and legally so, to ensure there is accountability, to ensure that there is a fair process, to ensure that the leaders of the Bar Association are elected in a democratic process. And that is what the past presidents have said. Mr. Joseph Fitzgerald Kamara is in the room. That is what they have said, that it should meet the highest standards. Highest standards. And that is our call. I said to my team that I was going into that election, I don't care whether I legitimately poll 15 or whatever votes were allotted to me. If it were a democratic process, I would dust myself off and then prepare for another round in the future. But we cannot accept a process that undermines and is a ridicule of democratic process. Because if we allow this, then we lose legitimacy as lawyers to call out politicians, to call out those who, by some Harry Potter-esque powers, would give numbers and then dish them so indiscriminately. We would lose that legitimacy and the moral pedestal to call them out, because we did not call those who manipulated our very internal elections. That is why we want to make sure that this is not tolerated, because once this is rejected, and successfully so, we will be sending message across the country that there is no room for electoral manipulation in Sierra Leone. Thank you.
I would like to comment on the fact that when the nomination was made for Ms. Chuma Jabi, I can definitely say she was not in the room. Why can I say that? I was in the same hotel at that time in Panama with her. Once we heard that the meeting had been called to order, we ran out of that hotel. We were ahead of her. She had not left. She had a delegation and all kinds of things behind with her. She had not even come down from the room yet. So when the nominations were made, myself and Mr. Marau in the room, and she was nominated in absentia. That is not an electoral process that we can recognize. It was improper, it was illegal, and it cannot stand. As far as why did we not protest before going to the AGM after writing all these letters and doing all these things? Because maybe I was naive in some way, but I was confident that we had the votes. I was very confident we had the mandates of our people. We had people who had not seen in how long, and seniors like Mr. Sheriff Moses making their way to Panama despite the distance. I was confident that as lawyers, even if the attempt was to stuff the ballot, they would not do what they did. They would not restrain us from voting. They would not stop the AGM from going on. And I guess I was naive, because I assumed as lawyers they had the level of integrity that we had. I assumed that I wouldn't want to win an election by cheating. I wouldn't want to win an election by stuffing ballots. I want to win an election fairly. And I certainly, after the farce of an AGM that was in Panama, will not be dancing and celebrating that I am the president of the Bar Association, because you did not win. It was stolen, it was theft, and it was an assault, and we are not going to let this stand. Our resolve, and the resolve, I want you at the fourth estate to look around you. All of these people here are lawyers. We are here because we are all aggrieved. We're upset, and we're not going to allow this conduct to hold. So allow us, and we will get back to you on the final outcome of all of this. And I'm sure you'll be following it, because it will be playing out in public for you to see, and for the world and Sierra Leoneans to understand that democracy must be fought for. We cannot allow it to be stolen from us. We cannot allow ourselves to go back to a dark place that we have come from.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the end of the question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have brought before you unequivocal pieces of evidence as to how the AGM was conducted, undemocratically, illegally, against every principle of good governance and democracy. The videos speak for themselves. The lead candidates have spoken members of the association who are agreed. We are very much resolute. We are going to pursue this and make sure we get democratic justice for all of us. Let us be firm in the resolve. Let us be unshakable. Let us ensure that the truth guides us in this process and we are able to, at the end of the day, make sure that whatever evil was done in tenure is undone. We will get that to the very last point and we'll make sure that your resolve to go to Kenema and what will be your genuine vote will come back and you will be able to exercise your franchise. Thank you for coming. God bless you. We're very grateful for your presence. Let us continue to fight for the Let us continue to fight. Let us continue to fight for what we have. Thank you.